You are listening to the Fire Rescue Athlete Podcast with your host, Aaron Zamzow.
Hey everybody, Aaron Zamzow here with the Fire Rescue Athlete Podcast. Today we're going to talk about resilience, and this is actually the third part of a three-part series on firefighter resilience, first responder resilience, and how, actually in this case, how nutrition plays a role in our mental health. And then how mental health, obviously, it helps to better mental health leads to more resilient first responders, more resilient firefighters. But there is a real direct correlation between what we eat and how we feel and how we act and how our minds and our brains actually function. And if you think about it, your brain is functioning basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. It never takes a time off. And you think about, all right, so something's got to fuel that brain. Just like your engine needs fuel. If you put in, high octane fuel or good fuel, the engine is going to run better, run more smoothly. It's going to have a cleaner engine. And the same applies to your brain. And I think a lot of us don't necessarily draw that correlation that, because our brain is functioning all the time and is so imperative to everything we do, the better you fuel your body, the better you fuel your brain, the more clearly you think. But the other thing I think that people don't understand is that clarity also leads to, more resiliency in the fact that we can deal with stress a little bit better. We think a little bit better. But then if some of us, sometimes we go through some mental health issues. We go through a little bit bouts of depression, whether it's due to the stress of the job or here in Wisconsin, it's seasonal. But what you eat, it really helps how you can defend against those and how you respond to some of those bouts of depression. And I just wanted to really hit that home today in this podcast. I have a post on the FRF blog about this particular topic, and it draws some correlations and it mentions some research. But, when you think about mental health, the first thing that comes to mind, I think, we think about PTSD, we think about depression. And what research shows us is that there is a huge link, again, to what you eat and how your brain responds. And there's actually some that show, some studies that show that when they compare diets like the Mediterranean diet and the traditional Japanese diet to what we call like a typical Western diet, which is what we kind of follow here in the U.S. or what most of us follow in the U.S., that those that follow the more Mediterranean diet or the traditional Japanese diet have, they lower the risk of depression by like 25 to 35%. And they link that to, the high sugars, the processed foods, the way that grains and wheats have really changed here in the U.S. The last couple of decades, because we're highly processed. We try to churn and burn food out for the masses, and we lose a lot of nutritional value. And, when you look at what the Mediterranean diet is and the traditional Japanese diets, they have a lot of fish and seafood and modest amounts of lean meats and dairies, but they have tons of fruits, tons of vegetables. And, again, we talk about, the Western diet. We have a lot of refined processed foods, a lot of sugars, a lot of fats, a lot of starches. And those starches, those processed foods lead to inflammation. And, we talked about inflammation and its correlation to heart disease, its correlation to diabetes, its correlation to, physical problems with, joint problems, rheumatoid arthritis, and all kinds of things. But you got to look at the mental side of this too. It also links that inflammation builds up in your brain as well as it does in your muscles in your body. And that can lead to cloudy thought processes. It actually can lead to decreases in cognitive thinking, which is why, my message to chiefs and captains, you got to understand is what you eat. And you see this a lot. You see chiefs that let their weight go a little bit and they're not eating really healthy. They're under a lot of stress, and they're the ones that are calling the shots on the fire ground. And to me, that's scary because that poor nutrition can lead to a decrease in cognitive function, decrease in brain health. And there's a lot of research that shows that. And again, as a frontline firefighter, I want to look at my chief and I want to know they're trying to do everything they can do to be at their best. And I really hope that the one thing you get from this is, whether you're a chief, a captain, or a firefighter, is that what you eat really plays into how you perform and how you act and how you respond to the stresses of the job. And I think that is the take-home message of this. We mentioned the research about the Mediterranean diet, traditional Japanese diet versus, our Western diets. The link of inflammation to, poor performance, inflammation to disease, that travels and that correlates up to the brain function as well. And ultimately, all of this stuff leads to resilience. If you have a high amount of inflammation in your body, you have a high amount of stress throughout your life, and you're not working out, which is what we talked about, in the second part of this, is how fitness really helps with inflammation and stress relief, which then makes you more resilient and able to withstand the stresses of the job. And right now, folks, I don't know if it's ever been more stressful. If you look at COVID, you look at now, there's budgetary constraints with first responders. There's a lot of health issues because we're thrown in the front lines. Right now, more than ever, you need to take control of your health. You need to manage your health, and you need to manage your mental health. Suicide rates are high. PTSD is high. Stress all over the country, all over the world is high. And I think we're in the forefront of that. And so, what you need to understand is what you eat really plays a role in that. Now, a lot of times we reach for food for a short-term stress relief. Think about it. Hey, there's pastries down in the firehouse. They're down on the table. I'm tired. I reach for that pastry. And for the next 5 or 10 minutes, I feel good. But what happens is that then builds up inflammation, because it gives, you have a high insulin and glycemic response to that increases inflammation. And that happens and can happen throughout the day. And then all of a sudden you're in a poor mood, and that can lead to bad cognitive decisions. Whether you're a paramedic, whether you're a firefighter, or chief and captain, which we talked about before. I mean, we all need to be as clear as we possibly can, and our nutrition plays a role in that. Traditionally, firehouses are full of baked goods and cooks that we cook tasty foods, but that's not necessarily the best thing for us. And I implore you, if you are a cook, or if you bring your food to the firehouse, bring something that has high amount of nutritional value. So let's talk about that. What should we eat, right? If we want to become a more resilient firefighter, what should we be eating? Now, the firerescuefitness.com blog page has a ton of nutritional guidelines on it. And actually in the post of this, resilience and nutrition correlation, I just talk about 3 real things. I try to keep it simple. But really, what you need to do to eat for better resilience is, first, you got to be prepared. And sometimes you got to keep it simple. One of the things I think that happens with us is that, you get a ton of calls, or we get stress of home life right now because we got kids at home, and we go for what's easy. And what's easy is not necessarily what's the best for us nutritionally. So what you need to do is be prepared. Think about, all right, what can I have that's quick, that's convenient, that's easy? Well, rotisserie chickens come to mind. They're usually done at and pre-cooked at some supermarkets. You also have, there's vegetables in a bag. Now, the research that I found is that, those still have a lot of high nutrition value. They're really quick and easy. Throw them in the microwave for 5 minutes. You got rotisserie chicken there. Then you could quickly, cook up some quinoa or some rice, and you got a pretty well-rounded, balanced meal. And the other thing that I would do is, once you have that balanced meal, make more than what you're going to have at that time. So then you're prepared. It's always there for you when you have that high temptation, or when you are really hungry. At our firehouse, I try to cook a little bit more, and then we kind of bag that up for later. We always say, hey, that's a great meal to have when you get back from a fire. Or if you do get hungry late at night from a lot of calls, you're reaching into the refrigerator and you're getting some of the good, healthy stuff that we had earlier today. And which is why a lot of times I put the pastries up in the cabinet, just out of sight. Because if it's there, you're going to eat it, which brings me kind of to your next point is out with the bad, in with the good. At home, you're going to reach for, a lot of times if you're stressed out, if you're tired, you're going to reach for those foods that you like. If they're not there, you can't have them. So peanut butter and celery is always a great one. You've probably heard me talk about and write about. But that, as opposed to having cookies in the cabinet or cupboard, right? So if they're out of your out of your house, they're out of your mind, and you want to try to put some fruits and vegetables there that you can readily eat. Grapes out on the table, celery out on the table, some cut up vegetables, some nuts, handful of almonds are always good. And I trust you. At first you're like, oh, come on, dude. But what happens is, when you eat that sugar food, or when you eat that mood food, as I like to call it, you feel great for about 15 minutes, and then you get that crash. And then you start to get a little bit of a mood swing. And with these other foods, you find out, with almonds and with carrots and with apples and bananas, and you don't necessarily get that mood swing, and you seem to have, and you will have more energy throughout the day. So, the second tip really goes a long way. If you get some, healthy foods in front of you and you get some healthy foods in your house, you're more likely to reach for them in your moments of temptation. So, have some meals prepared, keep them simple, out with the bad, in with the good, and then eat more mindfully. And I think this is the biggest reason why any diet works. I've had this conversation with a lot of people. You have the high fat, low fat, keto, Nido, who knows? There's so many different diets out there. But one of the reasons why diets work at first is because people need to become informed about what they're eating, right? So if you're going to eat keto, one thing is for sure, you start reading labels and you understand exactly what you're eating. If you're eating high carb or vegan, you start reading ingredient lists so you know what you're eating. And to me, that mindfulness, that second or two of where you think about what you're eating, you actually kind of draw a line between your cravings and what you actually need. And so eating more mindfully a lot of times is eating a little slower, understanding why you are eating and what you are eating, reading labels, and taking a little bit of time chewing your food. A great rule of thumb is eat slow and stop eating when you're 80% full. Because if you stop eating at 80% full and you just give yourself 5 or 10 minutes, you pretty much all of a sudden realize, well, I'm 100% full. I feel good right now. And so being mindful about your food choices, being mindful about what you're eating can go a long way in helping you make better decisions and not overeating. And I just put those 3 things in there. Those 3 tips alone, if you're thinking about, well, how can I start eating better? That's a great place to start. There's also some links we have on FRF blog, as I said before. Golden Rules of Firefighter Nutrition. I'll leave a link within that post for that particular article, and those are some guidelines that I've had a lot of people use in the firehouses and be extremely successful. So, the biggest thing that I want you to do in review here is to think about what you eat and how that not only plays a role in how you perform, but how you think. And if you're starting to get a little cloudy in your head and you feel the stress is coming on you right now, take a step back and think about how can you improve your nutrition? How can you start to become more consistent with your fitness? And then how can you continually do that and deal with stresses more positively? And to me, that's the entire resilient package. Is first you identify what your stresses are and how they affect you. Second is you deal with them in a positive manner, fitness, nutrition, and that might even lead to counseling. But I believe that if you do those things, you're going to have a lot better career, you're going to be more productive, and you're going to give back to the fire service. You're not going to be that person at the table that draws everybody down. You're not going to be that person in the department that is the Debbie Downer or the Donnie Downer. And if more people do that, we start building each other up in the fire service. We start building up our communities, and that's what we really signed on to do. So with that in mind, I want you guys to think about your nutrition, think about those tips, go to the Fire Rescue Fitness blog and look at some of those nutrition tips. Keeping it simple, be prepared, get out with the bad and with the good, and be more mindful with your nutrition. And I guarantee you will become a more resilient firefighter. And then lastly, what I really want you to do is start passing this information on to the members of your crew, the members of your department, especially any new recruits coming in. We need to understand that our fitness, our nutrition really play into how we respond to the stresses of the job. And together, the more people we educate, the better we become as a fire service, and we can change this culture. So anyways, thanks so much for listening. That's the third part of resilience. I got some more great stuff, some great podcasts coming. If you have questions, if you think I'm onto something or on something, you can always reach me at firerescuefitness.com, and then there's a contact FRF button up there. And I always listen and love and look forward to emails and feedback. So stay safe, stay positive, everybody, and stay FRF.
Thank you for listening to the Fire Rescue Athlete Podcast with your host, Aaron Zamzow. Please tune in again soon for more fitness tips for fire rescue athletes.